everybody, this is Bobby Walsh at the CONNECTICUT of Finance. We're going to start a series of videos here to help educate our clients, maybe spark some questions and conversations, to give you something that you can refer back to if you have any questions about anything. But the idea behind it is they're going to be short videos. We're going to try to give you some information on different topics and segment those topics in a kind of logical way that you'll have the full idea of a financial plan and how to actually work with your finances. There's a couple legs that hold up that stool. One of the legs is estate planning, another is budgeting, investments, retirement planning, and also life events that are going to happen that basically are going to support that stool also, and how we're going to work with those. You know, having a child, planning for a college education, buying your first home, possibly selling your home, starting a business, getting a rental property, or unfortunately the death of a loved one or a spouse. So we're going to go through all these things in different videos to, again, try to give you that information, to try to help educate you a little bit, and more importantly, spark those questions that you might want to come in and say, hey, this concerns me. On my personal situation, how do we do this? All right, so hopefully these videos will actually give you a really good basis, but also will spark those questions and actions to make sure that you're healthy, wealthy, and wise. So the first one we want to talk about a little bit is having an emergency fund. You know, if your financial plan is a trip that you're going on, and you're packing the car up and you're getting ready to go, the emergency fund is kind of like a spare tire. We don't expect to use it. We hope we don't have to use it, but it really could ruin the trip if you don't have one and you actually get a flat. So how does an emergency fund work? An emergency fund is some money that we set aside that we don't use for anything else unless there's a real emergency. And there's different arguments you can use back and forth on how much that money should be. As a rule of thumb, we tend to say about 3 months worth of income that you need to 6 months, all right? And whether you need 3 months or 6 months, to a large part, depends on your job. If you're, for example, a fireman or a teacher or a police officer, and you have the type of job that's relatively secure, that you're not it's very rare that you would actually lose that job, it's probably you probably really only need about 3 months. But if you're a person who's a contractor maybe, and you're in the construction industry, which is a lot more variables in that business of getting laid off and maybe no work, you might want to actually have more like 6 months into that plan. Other things that you can work for that, if you don't have that money right now, that you can kind of use as that money on the side, that emergency fund. If, for example, you have a life insurance policy and there's a cash value in the life insurance policy, we could kind of, it's not the best plan or the best idea, but initially we can kind of say, well, that emergency money in there is, God forbid, that if I need that money because, I lost my job or someone got ill or we need that emergency money, we can use that money in that life insurance policy because we have that extra cash value. Another area would be basically a line of credit on your home. Okay, this is another thing that we can say, hey, let's establish a line of credit so that we have that money. God forbid something happens, we need it. Because let's say, for example, your home is worth $500,000 and you owe about $200,000 on it. Very easy for you, assuming that your credit is okay, for you to go out to the bank and say, hey, I would like a line of credit on my house for about $100,000. The line of credit is relatively free unless you use it. But it's really great that, let's say you did lose your job and you have to make that mortgage payment and it's going to be relatively a temporary situation, or even if you need the time to downside to get yourself into another situation, that you would have this money to use if you actually needed it. It's a real difficult conversation if you have to go to a bank and try to take out money out of your house and you're basically saying, hey, I lost my job, we're not making as much money, but I know I have some equity in the house, but I need to take some of that equity out to pay that mortgage. That's a difficult conversation to have with a banker. But if you have a line of credit, it's practically just like writing a check if you're already established and not trying to establish it in the situation where you've actually lost a job. So having an emergency fund is a really important first step of setting up any financial plan, because without that, because life happens, all right, and when those life situations happen that we don't expect, whatever they happen to be, if you don't happen, all the other planning we do, all the other strategies that we're going to try to implement to make you healthy and wealthy and wise can actually fall apart. So it is my belief that you really need to sit down, look at your personal situation, look how much money is coming into the household. Now, that's the net money. That's money after taxes, after the 401k plan, after putting money in the 403b plan, after putting money in any type of other savings account, the net money that you're actually getting. But you also may have to bump it up, that if you have to pay now because you lost your job, if you have to pay possibly for insurance, for health insurance, we'd have to add that in to have at least 3 months or 6 months of spending money that we could get you through until you either found another job or if it was the case that you downsized enough that you could actually afford actually where you live. Including in that money, we're also going to add in, unemployment if you're not self-employed and you can actually get unemployment. So it's a relatively complicated formula, and we have to go through a lot of things, but the really, really good first step, all right, to actually figure out where we are, what we're trying to do, and what we would need to get us through that time period, whatever that time period we decide we need, to get you to the point where you can actually be solvent enough where you can recover and move on, rather than putting a tremendous amount of money on credit card debt, rather than basically owing money and not paying your bills and having your credit scores go down. Life happens to people. Good people have bad things happen to them. But we can basically protect you from that if you have that emergency fund. Also, you want to make sure the emergency fund is not too much. Having a tremendous amount of money in the bank, all right, with making really, really no money on it, but what are we getting at this point in time? Like a quarter 1% or 10 basis points on a savings account? Probably doesn't make sense. But look at that emergency account not as an investment, not as something we're going to make a lot of money on. It's like an insurance policy in case something goes wrong, in case we don't have that job or somebody gets ill or we need something, all right, that we can hit that account for that. Now, an emergency fund is not an infrastructure fund. What I mean for that when I talk to clients about it, there's also a great way to put some money away for infrastructure problems. The boiler blows up, you know what I mean, in the house, on 2 days before Christmas Eve, because honestly, that's when it's going to happen. So you want to have also money put away for that type of thing, whether it's $3,000, $5,000, $7,000. The transmission in the car dies, whatever it happens to be. You want to have some money put in for infrastructure and other uses, and then maybe you don't save as much. But that's not your emergency fund. Your emergency fund is what keeps you able to sleep at night. The emergency fund is basically what makes sure that your family will exist if something bad happens in the immediate. And again, we want to look at between 3 and 6 months worth of income coming in the houses versus if we were unemployed or there's a situation, the extra expenses that would entail, versus maybe something like unemployment insurance or other things that we could turn on to get us income to make up that difference. So this is Bobby Walsh at the Connecticut Institute of Finance, hoping to help you guys be healthy, wealthy, and wise. If this has raised any questions and maybe this is a concern for you, free feel to give us a call at the office. Love to have this conversation with you, and we'll be back next week talking about budgeting, all right, where we're going to talk about money coming in and money going out. This is really, really important because no matter who you are, if you have more money going out than's coming in, sooner or later you're going to run into trouble. We want to basically make sure that that financial engine on the back of your boat, no matter how powerful or weak it actually is, will propel you that if you have to slow down, that your budget, there's not too many holes in that boat that will make your actual boat sink. So again, this is Bobby Walsh of the Connecticut Institute of Finance. Have a good week, and remember, you want to try to be healthy, wealthy, and wise moving forward, and really plan your financial plan. People don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. Again, thank you very much for listening. This is Bobby Walsh, and we'll see you next week.